Sarah stared at her reflection in the mirror, mascara wand trembling in her hand. This was the 5th blind date her mother had arranged in 3 months. And she was done, completely, utterly done. Not with dating itself, but with the parade of men who saw her face and immediately started planning their futures, ignoring every word she said, every dream she shared, every piece of her actual self. They fell in love with her appearance within minutes, and it terrified her more than being alone ever could. So tonight she made a decision that would change everything. She wiped off the subtle eyeshadow she'd started to apply and reached for the cheapest, chalkiest foundation she could find, 3 shades too light for her skin. She smeared it unevenly across her face, creating a ghostly, patchy complexion that looked almost sickly under the bathroom lights. Her naturally thick, glossy hair got scraped back into the tightest bun she could manage, pulled so severely it gave her an instant headache. She found an old sweater in the back of her closet, deliberately stained and 2 sizes too large, shapeless and faded to an unfortunate mustard color that clashed with everything. The baggy sweatpants. She paired it with had a hole in the knee and elastic that had given up years ago. Sarah examined her reflection with grim satisfaction. She looked tired, unkempt, completely unremarkable. Perfect. If this man, this Daniel her mother wouldn't stop raving about, could see past this disaster and actually talk to her like a human being, maybe, just maybe, he'd be different. And if he took one look and ran, well, that would save them both an awkward dinner. The coffee shop her mother had chosen was one of those trendy places with exposed brick and handwritten menu boards filled with couples on their own first dates and college students, hunched over laptops. Sarah arrived exactly on time, scanning the room for someone who might be waiting. Her mother had shown her exactly one photo, a nice-looking guy with kind eyes and a genuine smile, but she'd barely glanced at it. Looks were exactly what she was trying to avoid. "Sarah?" A voice came from behind her, warm and slightly uncertain. She turned to find a man in his early 30s, casually dressed in jeans and a simple button-down shirt. He was the man from the photo, but somehow more real, more present. What struck her immediately wasn't his appearance. It was the way he was, looking at her. Not at her face, not assessing or judging, but looking at her with simple, open curiosity. There was no flicker of disappointment in his eyes, no suppressed shock at her appearance, just a friendly, genuine smile. "Daniel?" she asked, caught off guard by her own surprise. "That's me. It's really nice to meet you." He gestured toward a corner table. "I got here a few minutes early and grabbed us a spot. I hope that's okay. I didn't want to order for you because I find that kind of presumptuous, you know? Some people do that on dates, and I always think, how do you know what I want?" He was talking in an easy, natural way as they walked to the table, not filling nervous silence, but just genuinely sharing his thoughts. They sat down, and Sarah found herself studying him, waiting for the moment when his eyes would drift, when he'd check his phone, when the enthusiasm would drain from his voice. It didn't come. Instead, he asked her what she liked to drink, and when she said she was a tea person in a coffee shop world, he laughed, not at her, but with real delight. "See, I respect that. Standing by your principles in enemy territory. That takes courage." His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Sarah ordered her tea, still uncertain, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. But as they started talking, something unexpected happened. Daniel asked her about her work as a children's book illustrator. And he didn't just nod politely, he leaned forward, asking detailed questions about her process, her inspirations, the challenges of visual storytelling. When she mentioned she volunteered at a youth arts center on weekends, his whole face lit up. "That's incredible. Really, that's the kind of thing that actually matters, you know? My sister teaches elementary school, and she's always talking about how arts programs get cut first, how kids from lower income areas don't get the same exposure to creative outlets." He shook his head, clearly passionate about the subject. "What you're doing, giving your time like that, that's real. That makes a difference in actual kids' lives." An hour passed, then 2. Sarah had forgotten about her appearance, forgotten about her plan entirely. Daniel told her about his work as a civil engineer, but not in a boastful way. He focused on a current project designing accessible infrastructure for a community center in an underserved neighborhood. He talked about his volunteer work with Habitat for Humanity, about the novel he was failing spectacularly to write, about his complicated relationship with his well-meaning but overbearing family. He asked about her childhood, her dreams, her opinions on everything from city planning to the best way to make grilled cheese. When she excused herself to the restroom, Sarah caught sight of her reflection and actually gasped. She'd completely forgotten. The foundation had gotten even patchier. There was a tea stain on her sweater, and her severely pulled-back hair made her look like she was recovering from something serious. She looked objectively terrible. And Daniel hadn't flinched once, hadn't seemed to notice, hadn't cared. Something cracked open in her chest, something that had been sealed tight for a very long time. When she returned to the table, Daniel was looking at his phone, but he put it away immediately with an apologetic smile. Sorry, just checking the time. I have this terrible habit of losing track when I'm enjoying myself, and I didn't want to keep you out too late if you had plans. I don't, Sarah said, surprising herself. Have plans, I mean. This is really nice. It really is. His smile was so genuine it almost hurt to look at. I have to be honest, Sarah. My mom set this up and I was pretty skeptical. Blind dates, you know? They can be so forced, but this doesn't feel forced at all. You're easy to talk to. You're interesting. You actually listen, which sounds like a low bar, but you'd be surprised how rare it is. Sarah felt something twist in her stomach. Not unpleasant, but unfamiliar. Guilt, maybe, or hope. Daniel, I need to tell you something. He looked at her expectantly, openly, without suspicion or concern. I look terrible right now. On purpose, the words tumbled out. I've had these experiences where guys see me and they just kind of fixate on how I look, and they don't actually care about anything I say or do or want. So tonight I decided to look as unattractive as possible. This isn't what I normally look like. This sweater has stains. My hair is deliberately awful. I'm wearing the worst possible foundation. I wanted to see if someone could actually see me, not just look at me. She held her breath, waiting for anger, confusion, maybe offense. Daniel was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, he said simply. Thank you for telling me. That's it? Just okay? He tilted his head, considering. What else would I say? That sounds really hard, Sarah, having people not see you, I mean. Just seeing some version of you they've created in their heads based on what you look like. He paused, and there was something vulnerable in his eyes now. I get that, actually. Maybe not in the same way, but I get it. When you're an engineer, people assume things. That you're boring. That you're only logical. That you don't feel things deeply. My ex-girlfriend used to introduce me at parties as the engineer. Like that was my whole personality. Like I wasn't also someone who cries at movies and writes bad poetry and cares about people. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes unexpectedly. I think bad poetry is a very attractive quality. Daniel laughed, really laughed. Well, in that case, I should tell you it's truly terrible. Like painfully bad. Subject-verb disagreement, forced rhymes, the whole disaster. They stayed until the coffee shop started putting chairs on tables. They exchanged numbers, made plans for a second date. And when Daniel walked her to her car, he didn't try to kiss her. He just squeezed her hand gently and said, I'm really glad we did this, Sarah. Really glad. 3 months later, Sarah showed up for their regular Friday dinner date in a simple sundress, her hair loose around her shoulders, light makeup highlighting her features. Daniel answered the door to his apartment and stopped short, staring at her. Sarah's heart sank. Here it was, the moment she'd been dreading. Wow, Daniel said softly. Sarah, you look beautiful. She waited for the but, for the shift in his eyes. I mean, you always look beautiful to me, but that dress is really nice. Is it new? He kissed her cheek and ushered her inside, immediately launching into a story about a disaster at work. He didn't stare, didn't treat her differently, didn't seem fazed at all. She was still just Sarah to him, the woman who made him laugh, who challenged him, who shared his values and his dreams. That night, curled up on his couch watching a movie neither of them was paying attention to, Daniel said something that made Sarah's chest feel too full. You know what I remember most about our first date? Not what you looked like. Honestly, I barely noticed. I remember how passionate you got talking about teaching kids to draw, how your whole face changed when you talked about it. I remember thinking, this person cares about things. This person is kind. This person is real. He played with her fingers absently. That's what beautiful means to me. The rest is just decoration. Sarah thought about all the years she'd spent feeling invisible while being constantly seen, feeling unknown while being constantly admired. She thought about the test she'd set up, expecting Daniel to fail like everyone else. But he hadn't been passing a test, he'd just been himself, looking for the same thing she was, someone real. "I love you," she said, the words surprising her as much as they surprised him. Daniel's eyes went soft. "I love you too." Terrible fashion choices and all. She swatted his arm. But she was laughing, and he was laughing. And for the first time in her life, Sarah understood what it meant to be truly seen, not despite how she looked, not because of how she looked, but beyond it entirely, seen for the parts of herself that actually mattered, by someone whose vision went deeper than surface appearance ever could. The blind date where she'd tried to look unattractive had become the beginning of the most beautiful thing in her life, not because Daniel had seen past her appearance, but because he'd been looking for something else entirely all along, the same thing she'd been searching for: connection, authenticity, someone who understood that the heart of a person, their essential kindness and humanity, mattered infinitely more than any mirror could ever reflect.